What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. Thank you for joining us. My name is Eric. That's my co host, Will. And today we are getting into undervalued and overvalued players in your rookie drafts. We're talking guys that are must drafts. We're talking guys that are must avoids, landmines, whatever you want to call them. I'm excited to get into this one, but real quickly, before we do, Will, do you have anything to say to the people?
Absolutely, guys. Before we give you your guide to who you should draft, make sure you guys do all that great YouTube stuff. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way, you know when we drop videos just like this, where we're giving you keys and tips and tricks into your drafts going into this 2024 NFL season. But yeah, I'm ready to get into this one.
Absolutely. So I think we'll probably start with the positive end of the spectrum. We're going to go with the undervalued guys, the guys that you need to have on your radar and must be drafting if you still have your rookie drafts yet to come up. So Will, I'll defer to you. Who's going to be your first must draft player?
So, my first must draft player, and guys, we're looking at Dynasty Labs right now, Dynasty Data Lab. This is where we're looking at and getting our ADP from. So, when we're going by rounds, stuff like that, this is what we're looking at right here. And when I'm taking a look at undervalued players, I really like Jalen Wright the more I take a look at the profile and just the more I take a look at the landing spot. I feel like he's in a place with Miami where, they value speed. They picked up a guy who obviously is one of the faster running backs in this class, and I think he's going to fit in pretty well. Obviously, Raheem Mostert starting to get older. Last year had a great season, was used a lot. I feel like it was more of an outlier season for him as well, so who knows if he's going to be able to repeat that again. But he should be a big part of this offense going forward. So the biggest question here is how much is Jalen Wright going to play his rookie year? And, in the future, Raheem Mostert at some point is going to be gone from the team, and Jalen Wright will have his time. But speaking of right now in the present, I think there's still a high probability that he does get playing time. Devon Achane dealt with a couple injuries last season, missed a few games. Raheem Mostert throughout his career has dealt with injuries and has missed games. So I think there's a high probability that Jalen Wright meets the field even this season, and he can start carving out a role for himself pretty early on.
Yeah, I like that one. ADP wise, what is he sitting at? I have him at the 212. Is that about right?
Yep, he's sitting at the 212 over here for me as well.
Yes, at that price tag, I'd be really happy with him as well. I have a little bit more question about him as a prospect, just based on the offense that he's coming from in Tennessee, and how gimmicky that was and the light boxes that he faced. But you make a great point that this fit is perfect because
Mm-hmm.
he's going to a team that I don't want to call the Dolphins gimmicky because what they're doing is incredible, but they're going to be able to see a lot more light boxes similar to what he saw at Tennessee and get him in space a lot better than most other teams would. So I think that there's definitely a good chance, especially next year, for him to really produce and shine in that kind of Raheem Mostert role. This year, I do expect him to kind of get his feet under him and
Mm-hmm.
learn the NFL pace and how to run in between the tackles. But absolutely, as a long-term play, I love the fit.
Absolutely. And who do you have as one of your must drafts?
Yeah, so my first must draft here is a guy that's currently going at the end of the first round, ADP at the 112. It's going to be Jonathan Brooks. I think that, I think for me, I'm more certain about his range of outcomes than I am about any of the wide receivers going in that range. I don't necessarily have a problem with people taking some of those guys ahead of him because of maybe the ceiling play, the ceiling outcome that they could have. But Jonathan Brooks, a guy that we've had as our RB1 in this class for a really long time at this point, super smooth, kind of like a glider out there between the tackles and explosive as well in the passing game. Um, if I'm looking at what Dave Canales did in Tampa with Rashad White, who I think is a much less talented back, like we saw him be a top five fantasy producing running back. And so if he can do the same thing with a guy that I think is better, I feel like Jonathan Brooks is going to find himself in the top 12 of dynasty running back rankings sooner rather than later, potentially by the end of the year. Um, Obviously, they just added Rashad Penny, but that doesn't worry me too much. I'm not worried about Miles Sanders either. He's kind of shown us what he is and that he's not really that good anymore. Chuba Hubbard is maybe the biggest obstacle in his path to ascending the depth chart, and saying that is already like
Yeah.
that feels a little silly. This is a fairly easily ascendable depth chart in my opinion. So I'd be really happy with Jonathan Brooks at the end of the first round, and I'd be willing to take him as high as the 109.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I think especially if the Panthers handle, the injury situation, he comes back to full health at some point. I think he's got, the sky's kind of the limit. Like you said, I think top 12 dynasty running back potential is there. Top 10 dynasty running back potential is there. He's playing for a team that's proven they love to run the ball. They love to get running backs involved. And we talked about it throughout this whole process that he's the most well-rounded running back, or at least one of the most well-rounded running backs in terms of just skill sets in this draft class. So, like you said, we love the landing spot for him. It's an easily ascendable depth chart, and it's just, he's a great player himself. So I think he can be able to make a lot happen.
100%. Yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do there.
Absolutely. And taking a look at my next must draft, I'm looking at a guy whose ADP, he's currently going in the middle of the third round. I'm looking at Jatavian Sanders, a guy who at the beginning of this process we valued as the tight end 2 in this draft. Obviously, things kind of shook out a little bit different in the NFL draft and how things are going in dynasty drafts now. He's kind of going as like the tight end 3, possibly 4 in some, but I think I've seen mostly 3. But with Jatavian Sanders, he landed with the Carolina Panthers as well, and this is the second Panthers player we've had on this list. But at the same time, this is a young team who's still trying to figure out their identity and still trying to get their feet under the ground, and feet on the ground, not under the ground. But when it comes to a player like Jatavian Sanders playing at tight end, last year we saw Hayden Hurst kind of be surprisingly productive for that team early on until he started to deal with some injury issues. Then obviously the team had to look elsewhere. But look into a guy like Jatavian Sanders, who is valued already as a receiving threat more so than a blocker. He should be used primarily as a receiver, and at this point should be one of the better tight ends, if not the best tight end on this roster. I think that he's a guy who could get that early connection with Bryce Young, could be sort of that safety blanket for him. And for the way that he plays in sort of the middle of the field, short yardage, I think it just really matches up with what they need for that team, a guy for Bryce Young to be able to get the ball to.
No, I completely agree. I think it's a good fit. And the same way that we just talked about with Jonathan Brooks, like in terms of the young pieces there, it's uncertain. There's a lot of uncertainty. So the ability to ascend to the top or, near the top of that pecking order isn't that difficult. And I think he's got the talent to do it. So I like that pick. And also, just kind of a general thought here. I feel like a lot of the tight ends that are in this draft class are going undervalued. Ben
Mm-hmm.
Sinnott is also a guy that's going the third round that probably should be a second round value. You talked about Jatavian Sanders, even a guy like Eric All, who I thought got a great landing spot in Cincinnati, is going deep in the fourth round. Just some bonus guys for you. They're not necessarily main guys on our list, but guys that I think are worth looking into for sure.
Absolutely. And who else do you have on your must drafts?
Yeah, so my second must draft player here is going to be Jermaine Burton, currently having an ADP of 303, wide receiver that lands with the Bengals, another guy with the Bengals we just talked about. Yeah, after watching his tape, I came away feeling like he was maybe the most complete receiver in this draft outside of the big three. And I know that that's a big claim, and obviously production wise, he wasn't there and things like that. But even if you do have a problem with the college production, I feel like all of the same excuses that people have been giving to AD Mitchell apply to Jermaine Burton. And you can get him like half a round to nearly a full round later than you can get AD. And I think he got a better landing spot as well. But in terms of what he provides on the field specifically, is a really good route runner. He's got outstanding play speed and phenomenal ball tracking ability as well. And he's more than just a deep threat. He can work the intermediate and short areas. Like I said, he's complete. I think he's a really, really well-rounded receiver. Um, Currently being drafted as the 14th receiver off the board in rookie drafts, but comes in as our wide receiver 7 in our model. So that represents a really good value as well. And then I talked about the landing spot, but he's tied to Joe Burrow for the foreseeable future, and T. Higgins is likely on his way out after next year.
Yeah, T. Higgins likely on the way out. Tyler Boyd officially signed with the Titans, so he's no longer with the Bengals either. Like you said, it's just this could potentially be the Jermaine Burton and Jamar Chase show, and I think Jermaine Burton left a lot on the table in college that we didn't get to really see from his game. So I'm really excited to see what he can do, and like you said, I think the value is really there for Jermaine Burton.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just we saw what Tyler Boyd has done over the past handful of years. So like even as the wide receiver 3, if T Higgins doesn't leave, there's some production to be had. But yeah, if T Higgins leaves, it opens up a crazy ceiling for him.
Absolutely. And taking a look at my last must draft, I'm looking at a guy who is currently going at the 310 in drafts, around that range. I've seen fourth round as well for this guy. I'm going with Ray Davis, a guy who Eric actually brought to our attention, so shout out to Eric. I think that he, in terms of landing spots, landed in a really good place with Buffalo. It was something that I talked about with Eric the day he got drafted. In terms of, I think they finally got the goal line back that they've been looking for the last like 2-3 years. I feel like they finally got the guy to pair up with James Cook, who is going to probably end up eating in a lot of those touches, especially when you get into the red zone, stuff like that. I think he's going to be the go-to guy in the goal line. I think he's going to get involved, really early on. He's going to provide a role that is going to be, pretty good for fantasy in terms of just scoring points. I think he's going to be probably a more touchdown dependent player than a lot of other running backs in this class. But at the same time, there's a lot of value to be found in players like that. I can think of years with like Jamal Williams where he just scored a lot of touchdowns because he was used as a primary goal line back, and he finishes the RB2 that year, RB1 even.
He was high. I
Yeah,
forget what the actual number was, but he was top 5 for sure.
yeah, he was up there. So I think this is a role for a guy who is in an offense that is considered a high-powered offense. Whether it's going to be with the new wide receiver core, who knows? But at the same time, that means the running backs should get a lot of burn as well, considering the wide receiver core is as raw as it is. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Ray Davis can do. And at this value, I think he's a great player to have right here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Like, it seemed like a lot of the running backs in this draft class got maybe not bad landing spots, but got put into situations where they might not be able to produce right away, or the path to touches isn't as clear. Where I think it is really clear for Ray Davis. James Cook is the starter, and I don't think that that's in question. But you said the red zone role, I think, is automatically his, and I think some kind of in between the 20s and in between the tackles running is going to go his way as well. So there's definitely a path to touches immediately and potentially upward mobility if he proves to be maybe better than James Cook in some scenarios.
Absolutely.
All right. And so that leads me into my last must draft player here. We're going all the way down to the 4th round, currently listed at the 402. It's Kamani Vidal, another running back that I'm really excited about. I'm looking at his player profiler right now. He ran a 4.4640, which is in the 87th percentile, speed score of 107.7, also 88th percentile. Definitely a shorter back, 5'8", but coming in at 213. That's a great build to have. He was really stocky. His best comparable player on Player Profiler is Isaiah Pacheco. I don't necessarily see that in terms of running style, but in terms of career path, like a guy that was a late round draft pick, maybe an afterthought that ascended to the RB1 on the depth chart, I could absolutely see that for a guy like Vidal, who comes into the LA Chargers with, kind of a questionable set of running backs there on the team. They
Mm-hmm.
got J.K. Dobbins, who's struggled with his injury history for his entire career. They got Gus Edwards, who has shown to be good in Greg Roman's schemes, and that's where he finds himself again. But he's definitely aging, and he's never been the most explosive guy. And I think that Kamani Vidal represents a more complete back and a more explosive back. So if he can ascend to the top of that depth chart, I think he's got great opportunity there for him. Some other comps that I think represent kind of his high end or his ceiling that I've heard from other people in the industry and really liked. Maurice Jones-Drew, I think, is a really good comp. Just the compact little guy that's going to have the ability in between the tackles, but also as a pass catcher. And then also kind of like a DeAndre Swift light, but better success rate, like more consistent as an in between the tackles decision maker. So those are kind of some comps that I liked for him. But yeah, I just think that the opportunity there in LA, especially considering what that team is trying to do and establishing the run game, he could be a great value in the 4th round.
No, I absolutely love that pick. I think Kamani Vidal is going to be one of those guys who, after training camp and once we're getting into the preseason, a lot of people are going to be feeling good about drafting him in the 4th round. I think he's going to be in a very comfortable spot in that running back room. I
Yeah.
think that, and like you said, getting him in the 4th round of rookie drafts, that's an insane value for a team that, with the Chargers, they should be a very run heavy team. They should be really run first. You guys, we see what the wide receiver core looks like. They brought in Joe Alt to shore up the offensive line. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh's there, and we saw what they did at Michigan. I think there's going to be a lot of running the ball for this team this year, so I'm excited about that a lot.
100%. But I think that will wrap it up for our undervalued must draft players. Let's move on to the opposite end of the spectrum, the guys that we think are overvalued, that we think you should avoid, landmines in this draft class. Again, I will throw to you, Will. Who is your first overvalued player?
It's time to get toxic. It's Xavier Leggett. Currently going in the 2nd round of drafts, around A.D. Mitchell and Blake Corum. Going as the wide receiver 10 as well. Landed with the Carolina Panthers. And I know we had just talked about Carolina Panthers players and how we don't know who's going to shake out on top of what and who's going to be who in this team. But I think with the wide receiver room, I think it's a little bit more clear as to who's going to be who. The wide receiver one for this team should very well be Deontay Johnson. And with Xavier Leggett, it's tough for me to really buy in on a guy who can't separate, but I do feel like he's not going to be a complete zero. It was tough for me to find someone who, at least in this range or at least in this round, is a straight up guy I would not touch. But I think he's the closest thing that I would find to someone that I would try to avoid out of this group of people.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like the draft capital is hard to ignore. And for him going currently listed on Dynasty Data Lab as the 207, being a first round guy, like that seems too late. But just based on the profile and what we talked about in the pre draft process, he's not a profile that we want to bet on. He's profiles really similarly to Jonathan Mingo, who
Mm-hmm.
we saw that experiment not work out. I like him a little bit better than I liked Mingo, but I don't know. It definitely worries me, and so I absolutely can see where you're coming from and trying to avoid him there.
Absolutely. And Jonathan Minko, second round guy too, right? Like he got drafted pretty early
Yeah,
on as well. So
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that'll segue me into my first overvalued player. It's going to be Trey Benson, currently being drafted at the 203. And let me check here. He's going as the what one the second running back
RB
off the
two.
board.
Yep.
Um, which I just can't see it. Like in terms of other running backs that are available, like I'd rather have Corum. I think you could make the argument for Jalen Wright that you talked about as a must draft, taking him above. I get why people are excited about him. He's definitely a flashy player. He makes those big splash plays, makes those big chunk runs. He's really athletic, but he lacks the success rate, that consistency, the vision, the decision making that I think is going to be really key to him seeing valuable touches on the NFL field. James Conner continues to be undervalued by the dynasty community and just in the NFL in general. I think that he's going to continue to be the RB1 this year. And honestly, like this might sound crazy to some people, but Michael Carter is a really good third down back. He showed it when he was playing with the Jets and taking time away from Brees Hall, and he showed it a little bit last year. Honestly, I could see him still mixing in more than people are comfortable with. And so I don't know that Trey Benson has that year one ability that people are expecting. Maybe in year two after James Conner's gone, but even then, I don't really trust him and his profile to be that consistent high end running back for you.
Yeah, and it kind of mirrors the sentiment where I feel like I saw a tweet. I can't remember who it was. If I can find the tweet, I'll send it and we'll post it up here so you guys can see it. But essentially, it was just saying that like Trey Benson landed in a spot with Arizona where their offensive line really isn't all that great,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really matter because he doesn't really use his offensive line anyways. So if that doesn't really describe to you who Trey Benson is as a player and as a running back already, that's kind of the gamble you're taking. You're taking a gamble on a guy who, like Eric said, his vision is questionable at the very least. His decision making is questionable at the very least, but he's landing with a team who their offensive line is not very good. And James Conner is kind of an outlier. He's been really good with this team, but that's just, it's James Conner. That's a guy who's been in the league. He's been around for a while, and he's been playing at a high level for, pretty much as soon as he got an opportunity to. So
Yeah.
it's tough to say Trey Benson's going to repeat that, especially with the flaws that we've seen in this game at this point.
Yeah. Completely agree. Who's going to be your next guy up on the landmine list?
So my next guy up on the landmine list that I'm going to talk about is going in the fourth round at the 403. I'm looking at Devontae Walker. He landed with the Baltimore Ravens. And to be honest, I just don't really see where there is really, like, I see where there is room for him to be a part of this offense, but at the same time, I just don't really see how effective he can be in this offense.
Yeah.
He's one of the most raw prospects really in this draft. So he has a lot of things in his game he really needs to work on if I feel like he's going to be successful long term or even in the short term in the NFL game. And it's tough to say that he's really going to get a lot of volume in this offense when, especially they've even got a guy like Rashad Bateman who we feel like is one of the more underrated prospects in the NFL, who's a great separator but still can't really find volume in this offense. And we've got a guy who's not a great separator, who's a raw prospect, expecting him to fit into this offense. Early on, I don't think it's going to really be realistic. So it's tough for me to go for Devontae Walker at this range, even for this price.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. My best prediction for what he's going to be at the NFL level is a wind sprinter. He's going to be getting a lot of cardio out there, stretching defenses, providing an aspect to this offense that I think will be important and beneficial. Keeping defenses honest and making sure that they have to play back, but really allowing Zay Flowers and hopefully Rashad Bateman. I would
Hmm.
love if Rashad Bateman could get some burn, but really the guys underneath, Mark Andrews and stuff like that, to be more successful, not necessarily benefiting Devontae Walker himself. So yeah, even at that price tag, I just don't see the upside, and really that's what you're shooting for in the fourth round is guys that have some ceiling, even if there's no floor.
Yeah, because like he's a guy who's like probably gonna catch a bomb every once in a while. You know what I mean? But he's not a guy that you're gonna start. Maybe best ball, he's a good guy to have, but not
Maybe.
this format.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. The second guy that I have on this list is going to be Malachi Corley. The ADP on Dynasty Data Lab has him at 304. I've seen him go substantially, well, not substantially, but I've seen him go earlier than that. And in both of our drafts that we just did recently, I think he went at the 211 and the 301. So right in that 2-3 turn. He's exciting and fun to watch after the catch, but like these guys that are good at the athlete stuff and not good at the football stuff, like the route running and the separating, they're typically bad bets to make.
Hmm.
I feel like he just has mediocre ball skills, kind of unreliable hands, below average route running, and the vast majority of his production came from behind the line of scrimmage and those schemed up touches. Not that they can't do that for him. They're in New York, and with the depth chart being what it is, it's Garrett Wilson, old Mike Williams. Like there's a chance that he could ascend and have value there, but I don't know. I don't see him more than kind of just that gadgety guy. People compare him to Debo Samuel, but I don't think he's really anywhere close to the prospect that Debo was as a complete receiver coming out of South Carolina. Like I can see it from the after the catch stuff, but outside of that, I don't know. I don't see a ton. He's the wide receiver 23 in our wide receiver model, even when accounting for his decently high draft capital. And just in terms of other guys going in his range, like I'd rather have Marshawn Lloyd, Ben Sinnott, Jermaine Burton, Javon Baker, Kamani Vidal, and even Ray Davis. All guys that I'd be drafting over him.
Yeah, and it's tough to, like you said, it's tough to go with the guy who Garrett Wilson's already there, so he's gonna be the alpha there with them for a while. Who knows who else they bring in because they do have Aaron Rodgers there. I feel like it is a pretty good free agent landing spot. Depending on how they do this year, things could get even tougher for Malachi Corley going forward. And
Yeah,
it's I like the reports that have been coming out lately too. These reports always come out after the draft, but like apparently they didn't really want Malachi Corley either. They wanted a different wide receiver. I saw that in Sports
really?
Illustrated yesterday. Yeah, they were aiming for someone
Okay.
else, but they ended up with Malachi Corley. And those situations are always interesting to say the least, because like how
Yeah.
do you aim for another wide receiver, but then you get a guy who, like Malachi Corley, like you said, who's not really a great wide receiver, but a good athlete? You just decide to go with him instead. So it makes me interested to wonder how they're going to end up using him because that's not really what they were
Yeah.
aiming for. But at the same time, everything that you said is valid in terms of just how he could be used and just the profile that we've seen on him just going into everything.
Yeah. Speaking of funny things that I saw on Twitter, the official Jets Twitter posted a video of Malachi Corley that was like getting that work in. And it was just him running like a 1 yard hitch route. And they were like, look at how amazing he is. And it's like, bro, he just turned around. What are we talking about?
He
It was
took a
crazy.
step, turned, and caught the ball. God dang.
That was it.
God.
But all right. We can stop crapping on Malachi Corley because we have a guy that we're gonna mutually shit on together. Are you ready, Will?
Yeah, the Jets, we are not done with you, Jets fans. Go ahead and buckle up.
Braylon Allen. Oh no, ADP of 311. Yeah, I mean, what positive things could we possibly say about a guy that we were already questioning in terms of his profile, his production after his freshman year, and he comes into this situation behind Brees Hall, and not to mention Isaiah Davis also gets drafted here. Izzy Abanikanda is still here. Other guys that were kind of these under the radar running backs that we liked. I don't know that he's even the RB2 on this team.
Yeah, it's tough sledding for Braylon Allen. I had him in my guys list, and it was like watching a dog get put down. It was crazy. He's not gonna get any burn anytime soon if he stays with the Jets, especially behind Brees Hall. So RIP to that. And like you said, this isn't even like an easy depth chart to really ascend because
Yeah.
these are all guys who were taken in like the same range as Braylon Allen because it's not like he's a second or third round pick. He went really late in this draft.
Yeah.
So it's like they could really go with any of the guys after Brees Hall. Any of them. And I would not be surprised
Yeah.
if they did.
Yeah. I just like the 311 obviously isn't that high of a price tag, but I feel like the only reason he's being drafted there is because of the name value, because he was thought to be close to, if not the RB1 like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
One, as we got further in the process, we strayed further and further away from that to begin with. We didn't really like him a ton as a prospect in general. And then the situation is just atrocious. And when we're talking about running backs, like wide receivers, I could see the argument for taking talent over situation. Running back situation is a lot more valuable, and there's just not a path there for him to ascend anytime soon.
Absolutely. I think it's just if Brees Hall goes down, this either turns into a committee or it goes to someone else besides him. So
Yeah.
Braylon Allen, I'm not touching him anymore. He's not one of my guys anymore. R.I.P.
RIP is what it is. But that will do it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys are being able to draft some of these guys that we're really high on and making sure to avoid some of these guys that we're really low on. But let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Who are some guys that you're targeting and staying away from? We would love to hash it out with you. And also do all that stuff that Will talked about at the top, the good YouTube stuff. If you could hit that like button if you enjoyed the content, that means a lot. If you can hit the subscribe button, whether you're new or not, hit that sub button. You're going to like what we have coming out down the line. And also hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all of our latest videos. But I think that's all I got. Will, do you have anything left for the people?
Yeah, just make sure you guys check out those links in the description below to our partners over at Choice Music Group and Do Numbers. We have great music, stuff like that. So, and great merchandise. Eric wearing a Do Numbers hoodie over there right now. Check that out on the website. And check out some of the music, man. We always have some playing after the video. So give it a spin and have some fun. And make sure you guys check out a link to the Discord in the description below as well. Join the community, especially this time of year. Things get crazy with all the different drafts going on. We got startups, we got rookie drafts. Everything is happening in there right now. So join up if you just want to have people to talk to and just want to talk fantasy football. So with that being said, as always, if you guys made it this far into the video, we love you. And we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.